Welcome to the Dog and Pony Show. Your hosts are Tony King and Steve Oxshire, supported by the Amateur Field Trial Clubs of America. Today's special episode number 3 features Ben Brettingen, OnX Wingshooting Manager. Sit back and relax. Hello, everybody. This is Steve Oxshire, your host of the Dog and Pony Show, along with our AFTCA president, Mr. Tony King. Today, we have a very special interview with Mr. Brett Brettingen and with OnX Hunt. And we're super excited for this interview to start. And we're going to get underway here. And Tony, go ahead and let's get started.
Welcome. And, I want to apologize up front. When I recently did an interview with the American Field UKC, I referenced your article in that interview, and I probably butchered your name. So I want to apologize up front when you hear that article. But I did give you a little plug on the UKC American Field podcast. But I find it very, many of our listeners that follow the show now, and we're in the early stages of development, they're dyed-in-the-wool field trialers. And I think this interview is going to be unique in some aspects because we're not necessarily going to talk about per se a champion bird dog or a character or a personality of the field trial world, but we're going to talk about a topic that's talked about in your article from the February 2024 issue of Gun Dog Magazine entitled Understanding Pointing Dog Field Trials. And I think it's important to not only the field trial community, but to the bird dog community to create this bridge between the two, because the field trial community and the field trial world can benefit so much by having bird hunters get involved with field trials or learn what field trials are all about and understand what they are and what their purpose is, and we can then in turn understand from the bird hunting community all about the misconceptions of field trials and why more bird hunters shy away from our sport. And in your article, you talk about, you describe your experience in attending your first field trial. You kind of give a 30,000 foot view of what field trials are, the stakes, braces, judging. You talk about how the field trial community and the bird hunting community can both coexist together and how each can benefit from each other. And you talk a little bit about the culture. um, I think that this topic is inviting, and I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed so the field trial community can not only gain new membership, but we can reach out to that bird hunting community and say, hey, this isn't some magical, mysterious society that we meet in the back room in the Masonic Hall and talk about bird dogs. This is actually an inviting sport, and we want more bird hunters involved. So welcome and thank you. And Steve and I are kind of excited to get to work with you and hear your stories and your experiences. One of the Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
Your question number one here.
Yeah. So, Ben, for everybody that's in the field trial community that are listening here today, can you give everybody a little bit of a background about yourself, your family, your bird dogs, and your position with OnX Hunt?
Sure. Yeah. So you probably don't know my name from the field trial world, but I am quite an avid bird hunter, and I live in Minnesota, just western suburbs of the Twin Cities, and I have been in the hunting industry pretty much throughout my entire career. Worked for Vista Outdoor for a while, and now I'm at OnX Hunt, which, if you're not familiar, it's a GPS-based mapping company built for hunters. So, in my role there, I manage all of the I call it wing shooting, so everything waterfowl, upland, and which natural extension includes dogs, bird dogs. So that is my career, and it's also my passion, which is fun because I should say it's fun. I get to work all the time, but working is fun when you're doing that. So it's a great career. And then I've got a wife and a 2-year-old daughter now. So I'm in the thick of it on that front. And but it just an absolutely different perspective on everything. So in terms of dogs, I've got 5 dogs now. I started on the German train. I have 2 Drahthaars, and then 2 Drahthaars, a pointer, a setter, and a coon dog. So I am spread all the way across the board.
Wow, the coon dog, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
good, good. Well, good deal, good deal. So very, very diversified in your background, and now do you travel pretty much, or do you stay centralized, or do you travel? What's your travel destination?
Yeah, I travel a fair amount. Just off season for work, I'll be here and there. But when it comes down to the season, September 1st kicks it off, and I will be on the road between 80 and 100 days a year, mostly
Wow.
hunting. So, yeah, it really varies by year. This year it's going to be I'll do Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. We'll see what Kansas shakes out, see how the bird numbers are there. Maybe Texas. I'll for sure be in Arizona. But years past, it's been Alberta, Oregon, Idaho. So
Wow.
have
Wow,
bird dogs will travel.
Wow.
wow, wow. So you definitely be the expert on proper boot leather,
Yeah.
for sure, for
Well, maybe
sure.
not.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that has 8 or 9-year-old boots now. So they've
Yeah, yeah.
been saying I
Well,
need a new pair for 3 years.
oh, good deal, good deal, good deal. Go ahead, Tony.
W- Ben, so you're a bird hunter traveling 80 to 100 days a year.
Uh,
Um, when you were looking, following a fellow on social media, I think you referenced in your article on maybe possibly Instagram, this gentleman that you followed, the things that he was posting, what were some of the things that he was posting that interested you in potentially getting involved in field trialing?
Yeah, so a little backstory on that. So with my 2 Drahthaars, I had ran through the JGHV testing system, which is obviously much different than the field trial world, similar to NAVDA. But I really like the competitive. I mean, I shouldn't say competitive because technically that's not a competitive or should be competitive aspect of that testing system. But I really enjoyed it, and as I moved at the time I was living in Mississippi. So we were hunting ducks, deer, bird hunting, a little bit of everything. But I moved back when I took the job for with OnX. I moved back to Minnesota, where I'm from, which gave me I was a lot closer striking distance to bird country. So naturally, I wanted something that was more specialized for bird hunting to be able to go out and run the prairies, and just in my opinion, a more effective dog for that task. So uh, in that, I was kind of out of the Drahthaar thing, moving back up here. Didn't know anyone, didn't really care necessarily to continue doing it. But I love that community. I met some friends to this day that I mean from down south. They come up and hunt with me in Montana, and I love that camaraderie, that people with a similar interests that you can band together and you form a connection, right? So I had this young pointer and I wanted to see what it was all about. I knew nothing about it. I shouldn't say I knew nothing. I knew relatively little. And he had been posting that there are cover dog trials in in our area in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and I had went up and watched a trial up our Minnesota Grouse Dog Association, which is a couple hours. We run our trial from my house, and wanted to just go see it, experience it, and it was like, oh, this is cool. And this is before I had a dog. It's like this is awesome. Got the dog and saw he was posting, and it was just it was not what I expected. In that article I referenced, you go down to I've been down to Ames a couple times, and it's a totally different scene. I mean, I don't have horses. I don't have a giant trailer. Right. So it's like it was kind of out of reach until I saw this cover dog stuff. And it was
Right.
like, okay, this is more obtainable. Like I want to go experience this and see what it's all about.
I and when you went and watched, and one of the things, say Ames or some of the other horseback field trials that are out there, unless you crawl up on the back of a horse, some of those things can be hard to watch. And road galleries, or unless there's a dog wagon available, they are hard to see, and it's hard to understand what's really happening. And I think when you went and watched your field trial kind of from a spectator point of view, were you able to walk along and see, were you on a hillside looking down? Where I'm trying to figure this out, because we're trying to provide some opportunities for, ways to provide opportunities to see more what we do.
Yeah. So in our region, at least, Wisconsin, Minnesota,
Right.
obviously in the grouse woods, everything is on foot here. I mean, out east, even in Michigan, you've got judges riding horses, but for the most part, the gallery is all walking. And I've seen galleries of 30 plus people
Oh, wow.
following along on these braces. So we've got a really good president up here of our club. Chris By is his name, and probably fantastic for new people coming into the sport. Very helpful, welcoming, and so it's like, hey, I sent an email, and it was like, yeah, come on, like I will show you around, and you come and walk braces. And at the time, I think I walked a couple braces before I had to go, but it was difficult to. I mean, it was difficult to take it all in because there were
Right.
I shouldn't say arbitrary, but there's just some different rules, and you just show up and you start walking, and you try to be quiet in the gallery, right? So, uh, yeah, it was like I learned something. I saw the format of it, but at the same time, I had no idea what rules, how even necessarily everything interworked until I got more involved.
So you were kind of like, okay, I like it, but I got to figure out how is Ben and my dog going to fit into this program. I'd like to be part of it. So, thinking about that, so there's actually 30 or 40 people sometimes in the gallery walking along. Does that affect the dog?
No, because I mean, most of the time there's a minimum of probably a half a dozen.
Okay.
Um, and for some reason, I mean, the spring trials they get a bigger draw because they're on the weekends, where our championship season, our fall trials are all mostly during the week. But yeah, it wouldn't be uncommon to see, even in it's funny, derbies are the big draw. We'll get 20, 30 people on a derby brace.
Oh, wow. I saw a post, I believe it was Robert Ecker out on the East Coast was it a US complete trial? And one thing that I found interesting was one of the judges was actually riding, what was it, an electric bike?
Oh, really?
One of the big tired
Yeah.
bikes. And I thought, for the grouse trials, or some of the trials on the East Coast with tight field trial courses or single courses, that's not a bad idea.
No.
It's
Especially out
act
there. I mean, their courses are more like golf courses compared to ours. Ours are like we're in bird country.
Right, right, to
Um,
where you're ducking under limbs and
yeah, we
going through
trim
the
and stuff, but it's like, we could be walking through. I mean, a lot of the times you're gonna get your boots wet for sure, going through the mud. Like we are going through grouse cover. Where out there, it's like, I mean, that's where it's the cover dog stuff obviously started, but that is not the future, just because they don't have birds out there anymore.
right,
Like
right.
Marionville and all that stuff are kind of a shell of what they once were.
Ben, let's talk about your first trial experience at Moose River
Yeah,
Grouse Dog Club in Wisconsin. I'd kind of like for you to maybe describe what were you thinking before the field trial? What were your expectations going into it, and your goals running in your first field trial?
sure. So really, the first notable point was how difficult it was to find information.
Right.
Honestly, even to enter the trial. And I had been working with my buddy. His name's Kyle Peterson, and he was able to kind of show me like through the process. But okay, you've got to go on the you got to go on American Field. You got to find the calendar, click it, email your entry. You need to include all this information, and then there is some, I mean, for lack of a better term, antiquated forum that you have to go on. You have to
Right.
click on the thread to get the running order and when things are going to start and more information. And actually, I didn't even know about that during that trial. I think I was the first, it was, I was one of the earlier braces. So it's like, I'm just going to show up first thing in the morning and meet where it said to meet. And I'm just going to ride the train all day because last thing I want is to show up late and be rushed and not know where to go. Because the other hard thing about that area is there's no cell phone service. So that makes things quite interesting when you're, a newcomer, and I just didn't want to get left behind. So uh
Sure.
I was able to get entered. Everything was great. The folks up at the Moose River Club, great people. So I was able to get there, and I was nervous. I was really nervous because
I bet.
I'd been out on the prairie with my dog for a month at the time, and I mean he was a 8 month old pointer, and we were. I mean he's a pretty big running dog. Out on the prairie. Um, he he would roll. If I let him roll, he'd touch 1,000 yards, no problem.
And you're thinking, how am I going to reel in this 1,000-yard dog in the woods?
Yeah, and I had been in the woods at that point. I probably spent about a week in the woods, just kind of bringing him back and playing a different game. And again, I got this dog in March, so or yeah, March or April. So at that point, he had never spent really much time in the woods because he was just a little puppy. So it's like, all right, this is going to be an adventure. Not obviously you can't don't have my e-collar, so it's like, okay, let's give this a shot. And all I was like I say, when I got up to the line, it was I just hope I can hang on to this dog. Even it was a derby, so it was only 30 minutes, but I was just like, if I can get this dog around, I'm gonna be happy.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, those fears never go away.
No,
Whether you've been in this in 5 years or 20 years, every situation presents itself. And when you're doing a good job with a dog in a brace, and you probably know this, um, those fears manifest. They start thinking that you start thinking of the things. Oh, am I going to lose this dog? I know I'm doing a good job. I want to finish him. I have a chance to place. So, those first time experiences never go away.
no, no. And yeah, so we broke away, and I to your point, I think I mean that tension I was exuding was obviously palpable to him
Right.
because a dog that I mean he and I don't like him to run this big necessarily in the grouse woods, but I mean it's not uncommon for him to hit 300-400 yards. I don't want that to happen, but it does. And for whatever reason on this day, he must have been able to feel that I was nervous, and he was a bit of a gentleman. I don't think he got over 200 yards, and he was good about checking in. And really, all I knew about it is they want to see your dog forward and go find birds,
Right.
and we'll go follow the ribbons in the woods. And so I was just going for a walk with my dog.
I think you did I think you took a step into the field trial world from the bird hunting world that a lot of newcomers follow. Either enter into a puppy stake or a derby stake, which are typically unbroke stakes that you can turn your dog loose, and judges are judging potential to become a broke dog in either a shooting dog standard or an all age standard. So it makes it fun. It makes it exciting. And you mentioned earlier in our private conversation that sometimes derby stakes are really popular for you guys in the grouse woods, and you're trying to tap into unbridled emotions of that dog.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just funny as I've grown in the club and I've judged some stakes as well, and it's fun to see we have a lot of new handlers in the club, and it's fun to see these guys that, yeah, they're just, I mean, the same path that I came along. They're hunters, and they heard about it on the internet. They heard about it on Instagram or Facebook, and they're coming with these jam up good young dogs who are, they're grouse finders, and they come and they don't know the game, and it's just fun to see them do kind of follow that same path, because it's been so much fun for me in these last few years. It's fun to see all these other people kind of going through that same pathway, to your point.
Right. So you finished your brace. Let's talk about the find.
Yeah.
That find that you talk about in the article, that find that really reeled you into the sport of field trialing.
Yeah. So, I mean, the pointer of mine, his name's Amos. The great thing is I mean, pointers, he matured early. He was a productive member of my hunting party from the second I damn near dropped him on the ground. So, I guess I wasn't concerned if there was a bird there, or he was able to run across it. He would stop and hold it. So I was just hoping we would happen across a bird, and there was a deadfall that Bell stopped, and I don't know how many people here are or not familiar with the cover dog circuit, but obviously we're listening for Bell. A lot of it is not visual. So Bell stops, and thankfully it was up probably 80 yards off of the up in front of us on the course, and it was maybe only 30 yards off to the side of the course. So I walked up there, and big white dog in a aspen cut pointing down at a blowdown, which it was perfect situation, because it's like, okay, I know that there's probably a bird here, and odds are that this bird is going to hold well in this blowdown. And so I walk around to the front of the blowdown, bird gets up, and he didn't see it, thankfully. So shot, walked around, he was still on point, and I picked him up, and it's like, oh, that was fun, like, very cool. And I mean, at the time, it's like, the whole broke dog thing. It's like, oh, it was a dead broke find, and it
Wow.
was, for me, it was like, oh, well, that's cool, whatever, like, grab him, like, that was fun, and send him on his way, and we keep going. So it was just, for me, it was probably more, I was probably more nonchalant about it then than I would have been now. I would have been fired up now if I had a young derby with a dead broke fine. But at the time, it's like, oh, that's cool. That's what he does. Like, let's just keep going on our business. So we get done, and I went up to Kyle, and I said, oh, thanks for showing me around. It was a Sunday. It's like, I'm gonna go hit the grouse woods, go hunt a little bit, and it'd be fun to catch up later and go to another trial. He's like, you should. If I were you, I might hang around for a little while. I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. And
The conversation, the anticipation of, oh, did I do good? You, being a newcomer, didn't necessarily understand that the quality of
no,
work you had and the performance you put on may have been one that the judges felt could be used as a placement. So you're just like, I'm gonna go grouse hunting, and I'll talk to you later. But he's trying to tell you, hey man, you might be in this thing.
yeah, exactly. So I can tell you, it wasn't a show on my part. It was me walking through the woods. There was no showmanship. Um, so yeah, and I was shocked to hear my name called. He had a third place finish, and I was just tickled. I mean, that's, talk about a way to get hooked.
Right.
I could have, I mean, Tony, I could come pick you up in a private jet, it seems like, if I didn't get into bird dogs and field trialing.
What's the old Tiger King meme? I'm never going to financially recover from this, and that's
Yes.
based on that one find.
Yep. Cursing that dang dog for finding that grouse. So,
Yeah, yeah. We've all experienced that. We can probably all remember our first field trial performance, and probably remember brace by brace. There's been many others that have gone and went that we can't, but th- there's something about that freshness and that misunderstanding that actually makes it so intriguing. Because when you do get involved in field trialing, you put a lot more pressure on yourself or your dog to perform under those circumstances. But there's something pure and natural about that first time experience that's so captivating, to the field trial folks, and why people get so hooked on our sport.
Yeah, 100%. It was just for me, it was a natural extension of hunting, and I had seen it through what I did on the German dog side. It's like it's that extra incentive to go out and work dogs because you don't want to break a dog away and just feel bad about it, right? Like this is not going to go well. So where if you're going hunting and you drop a dog, it's like, well, whatever, right? It's I want it to do well, but at the end of the day, what does it really matter? So that
Right.
field trial, it adds that extra incentive to want to train and continue to push yourself and your dogs to perform better.
Right. Right. So since your first trial, where have you gone? You said that it was somewhere in the 2020. What are you doing in the field trial world with your busy schedule? What are you involved in now in the field trial world?
Yeah, so I'm not a 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of guy. So I've tried to immerse myself as much as I can, and I will running the cover dog circuit over here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, which we have 3 clubs over here, and we host probably, let's see here, so five trials in the spring, and then four in the summer, three, at least 3 cover dogs, actually 4 cover dog trials, and then the MBHA Sharptail is over here as well on the Barren. So I'll in the spring I'll try to run all of them. In the fall I might only run 3 of them. But I've ran a couple horseback stakes out in North Dakota with the Northwest Field Trial Association, as well as I'll try to go down to run some NBHA stuff down with the 12 o'clock Field Trial Club. So um, as well as I think it was the spring after, or maybe a year after that, my dog was still a derby. It felt like he was a derby forever. Um, but I went and ran him over at Gladwin in Michigan, just because those are pretty hollowed grounds. If you're a cover dog guy,
Right. Right. Um, it's funny you mentioned the Barrens. How close are you to Namakagon Barrens?
2 hours.
2 hours. Well, Steve and I have been kicking around the idea and trying to coordinate our busy schedules to where we can go up and run in Region 19 all age. Steve's been up there. I have not. So it's something I'm kind of looking forward to, and would like to get up there and see, because Steve says that's an absolutely beautiful place.
It is. It's very unexpected. This beautiful short grass barrens, surrounded by big forest. So it's kind of a bit of an anomaly and a great place.
Cool. Cool. Well, moving on here, in your article, Ben, you briefly touched on judging, and basically stating that it's often up to a pair of judges to determine the dogs they believe put on the best performance. And it's always been my experience over the last forever length of time that I've been involved in this, that um, if the field trial club puts a pair of judges in the saddle, or that it's their job to judge the best total performance of the standard for the stake that's being run. You, as a newcomer, getting involved and learning about judges, what's your thoughts on subjective judging? Because my wife always says, don't get your feelings hurt. Don't get mad. It's all subjective. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So again, just in comparison, I guess I would call it subjective more so from the fact that coming from the German side, it is very cut and dry. Like there is not a
Right.
whole lot of room for interpretation. But coming here, it's like, yeah, there certainly is some judges that I've experienced. They like a certain type of dog where you go to a different club or a different area, and they're looking for something slightly different. And we're not talking light years away, but you go up into some of the thicker stuff, some of the clubs, and they're generally going to tend to uh, place a tighter working dog, where you go to a different track, a different course, and that's where you'll get away. You can have a 200-300 yard dog in the grouse woods, and as long as they stay hooked up, as long as they are right at that edge of bell range, like that is what you want. um, as well as some of the style implications.
Yeah.
Some teams are just they're looking for the best performance in terms of um, finding birds, right? Staying up front, finding birds. Where other ones, it's like, well, this dog's tail set was maybe not 12 o'clock; it was 10:30, 11 o'clock. So I don't know if I can place that dog. And it's just that's some of the subjective stuff I see, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, and I know you're probably familiar with this, but to explain to the bird hunting community, there are times when your dog, you can attend a field trial and watch 30 or 40 dogs, and when that performance has finished, that dog is going to be somewhere in the mix. He's done that good a job. It's a lot of times it's pretty cut and dry, but there's also times to where you think you did a good job and you don't get anything. And there's other times where you think, my dog could have done a lot. Amos could have done a lot better.
Hmm.
And you may get a placement. So it all kind of washes itself out in the long run, but it is a subjective process, and it is something that it's a little hard for the bird hunting community to understand.
Yeah, and then the other aspect too is, again, these are all wild birds. We were running on wild grouse and woodcock, so it's not, in other aspects like this, a lot of the times it's not a bird counting. You're not counting. It's like this dog had 5 finds, this dog had 2. A lot of the bird hunters be like, well, why wouldn't my dog win? Like, my dog found 5. It's like, well, your dog never left 40 yards in front of you, and
Right.
sure, it found 5 birds, but that that is not what we are looking for in terms of a performance. So that's been a hard thing, I think, for newcomers to kind of get it, myself included, like how to get over that. Like, we're looking at an overall big picture. This is not a bird counting competition.
Right. Right. That is a great point, and a point that we needed to be brought up, because if you're judging the best total performance, that 5 fine dog, as you said, it may not have near the performance that reaching 2 or 3 fine dog, having 2 dug up limb fines
Yeah.
off course, that that are just making the judges sit up in the saddle in the gallery go, holy cow, how did that dog do that?
Yeah, 100%. Because now I, after being involved a lot more, like that's the stuff that you find a good dug in find on a swamp edge or something like that, and it took you 5-10 minutes to get there. That makes my, I mean, just thinking about it kind of makes my hair stand up. I get goosebumps about it, because that's the stuff now that as a judge or even as a spectator, it's just so much fun to see. And and that's I guess a learned thing more so than inherent to, I would call, hunting dogs. So
Right. Absolutely. Um, one of the other concepts that I found neat in your article was you talked about the misnomers or the old adages. You know, you said you hear the sentiment that field trial dogs don't make good hunting dogs, and you go on to state that this couldn't be further from the truth. And you kind of break it down into 3 categories: misunderstanding or lack of knowledge of the full spectrum of field trials, which we know we've touched on that's a learned process. And you talk about stories about runaway field trial dogs who are washed out, put into hunting homes. And you state that the third reason, the belief that the old thing that, oh, my old hunting dog Ben, he or Dan or
yeah.
Sam won't stack up to the field trial competition. But can you expand on your thoughts on these misnomers and old adages, and what you had to overcome and what you learned from always hearing this, but actually going and experiencing and in actually enjoying both bird hunting and field trialing.
Yeah, 100%. So the first one, just the misunderstanding would be, again, kind of like I brought up earlier. It's that we're in this giant wide open area. Everyone's on horseback. These dogs are big ranging dogs. Like, oh, maybe that's not like I don't. There's very few people, honestly, that hunt like that, right? So why would I ever want a dog that is put up against that standard? Um, why would I ever want that? Why would I want a dog that's 500-600 yards away when I like my dog 150, 200 yards away in the woods, at least up here, or even if you're a pheasant hunting, right? Where it's like, okay, that misunderstanding evolves from, well, that is a different game. That's a different sport necessarily. We're not looking for that in the cover dog scene here. We don't want a dog that's 600 yards away in the grouse woods. So if you bring an all age dog in the grouse woods, it's probably going to run off. Odds
Right.
are, or just spin out, not knowing what to do in the cover. Um, so it's that misunderstanding why people be like, yeah, I don't think that would make a good hunting dog. And it's like, no, of course it'd be like putting it's like putting a lab in a field trial pointing dog trial.
Right.
It's like they're built for different applications.
Sure.
So I think that's the first thing. That's just not understanding. And then a lot of it is, yeah, it's like, okay, I know a buddy that got a high powered dog from a pro, who just didn't quite make the string, and then they take it into the same situation and they have a bad experience, and that misrepresentation, now those stories, those anecdotes get out in the public, and all of a sudden you hear somebody say that, and it's like, okay, what friend do you know? It's like, oh well, it's a friend of a friend of a friend, blah blah blah. And so that myth gets kind of permeated into it. um and then lastly, which I think is a big one, and kind of what I meant by this in terms of what I hear a lot is guys around here, they don't, it's like, I don't want a broke dog. I don't want a steady dog to wing and shot because I want them to go retrieve it, or I want them to be able to mark it and get on that bird right away in a hunting setting. When in reality, what I believe is that either A, and I can loop my earlier self into this. A, they don't know what goes into breaking a dog. They don't know how to break a dog. They don't want to spend the effort to keep a dog broke. So then they just turn in that sentiment of they don't make good hunting dogs, because as a trainer or just as a hunter, you don't want to spend the amount of time necessary to keep that dog broke. So it's that lack of confidence, or yeah, where it's like, well, my dog can't do this, or I haven't kept my dog to the standard, so why would I want to do that? If
Right.
that makes sense.
It does. It makes complete sense. And what has the field trial experience benefited you and your team of dogs in regards to training and handling? Maybe have you taken some things that you've learned from field trial handling to the woods or to the prairies, or vice versa with the training?
Oh my gosh, 100%. 100%. It would be, what I would equate to it is playing football at a high school level versus trying to go play professional football, right? It's you really have to pay attention. Details matter. Where again, like I said earlier, if you're going out for a hunt with your dog and it breaks it rips a bird or something like that, so what? We'll go find another bird. Not a big deal. But when you're digging into the little nuances, the details, you're trying to gain inches, right?
Right.
It's like that's where you really have to dig in and understand your dog better, and that's how you gain those incremental little advantages, those little steps. So 100% it has made better bird dogs, in my opinion. And as a handler, I've had to pay attention to get those incremental gains. And I think it's really just that connection with the dog. You know what that dog is going to do before it does it. and obviously the people involved as well. A lot of those guys are just an absolute wealth of knowledge. So, yeah, you're just spending more time with that dog, and getting those incremental gains out of its performance.
Right. Has field trialing helped you in regards to potentially selecting your next future bird dog team member, or has it brought you knowledge in regards to specific bloodlines that you may want to key on?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Tony. And I can't remember if I talked about it in this article, but I love this question, because, and again, I'm going to lump my earlier self into this. Think about, and I'm a little bit different situation because I do get the chance to hunt with a lot of different people. But you think about a normal guy that is hunting, he might hunt with 2 or 3 buddies, and maybe somebody joins from outside their group and comes hunting, and this guy has got really good bird dogs, and you're judging it against maybe the 3 or 4 buddies that you hunt with, and it's
Right.
like, oh, this line of bird dogs is just jam up. They're fantastic. And I see that a lot when I hunt with people, and I've got a good friend that hosts a TV show, and he says the same thing. I mean, everyone loves their bird dog the most, and they think they have the best dogs. Then you go into a field trial setting, and you're not seeing 3 or 4 good dogs. You are seeing that, arguably that area's best bird dogs. So instead of watching 3 or 4 a whole year, I can watch 30 or 40 dogs in the span of 2 days. So your eyes are open to that spectrum of what's out there. Um,
Yeah, I
so
agree.
certainly, yes. And then you also, as you're again looking at the nuances of these dogs, um, you're better able to find bloodlines that fit what your objectives are, what you're looking for. And I'm not looking from strictly a field trials perspective. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a wild bird hunter. So, and we're the goal up here is we are raising wild bird dogs because that's what we are trialing on. So, to be able to find those dogs that suit the way I hunt, the way I train, the way I trial is been an eye-opening experience.
Interesting. Those are all great points. And I another question came to mind, and this is something that wasn't that I didn't really intend to ask, but thinking about what you just said, um, from the bird hunters in Minnesota, or the bird hunters in your area up there that may run in the cover dog trials, are there young guys such as yourself that are breeding litters and selling to their buddies, or are you guys looking toward the larger kennels or the field trial bird dogs to get your puppies?
Great question. So we certainly, I've got a young setter right now that I got from a friend of mine from the field trial cover dog circuit, and I mean he's been involved for over probably closer to 15 years. Kind of grew up in it, and he's breeding dogs, and I got one from him, um, but that's a great question because certainly we're playing a different game than
Right.
a lot of the other countries. So, um, we rely on. I mean, a lot of the dogs bred around here are will certainly pull from some of that East Coast stuff, Michigan stuff. We do have a number of people that do make the trek over for our trials. But I mean, largely it's going to be, you don't see the quite the operations. I mean, a lot of it, the big ones around are, your Bruce Menards, obviously John Stolgitis out east. And then you have the Chafies, but we're blessed to have some really good breeders in our area, that produce great dogs for what we're doing. Um, so the Jerry Coulter Northwoods bird dogs, you see a lot of that stuff in
Yeah.
our pedigrees around here. Obviously with Steve Snyder, the Ponderosa Max. So it really varies, but you do start to see. We have started to see a lot of some of that all age stuff come into the grouse woods. So which is interesting because some lines could use a little bit more horsepower, but it's interesting to see some of those all age bloodlines come in here, and some of them adapt well, some of them it's like they do not adapt well.
Right. And I some of that may be just some of that may, the dog obviously has the natural abilities or bred to have the natural abilities, but some of that may be just based on the way they're started or,
100%.
what experiences they have in their early development. So, but that's interesting because, in the Midwest, Ben, the localized breeders, we just don't have that. So you're either as an amateur field trialer, you're doing it yourself. You're trying to raise that champion and potentially find the right female and breed a litter
Hmm.
to carry on your program, or you're going outside to the Chris Kagels or the Fred Quarters or the Sean Derricks,
Yeah.
the Gary Lesters in the all age world. Some of the prominent folks that have larger kennel operations to where there's a larger pool for you to kind of choose from. So I was just kind of curious because it sounded like you had a strong following of a bird hunting community actively involved in field trialing. I thought, well, I wonder if they're breeding their own dogs and then running them in these field trials. So
Yeah, no, a lot of them are. I would say the vast majority of them are probably bred around here, and again, we are breeding for this very specific application.
right,
And I could this could be taken the wrong way, but again, I want to emphasize the point is like these are wild bird dogs built for grouse hunting, and I'm not knocking anybody here, but some of these dogs on the field trial circuit or NBHA or whatever, like they have never seen a wild bird, like
absolutely.
admittedly. And so it's like, well, I mean, certainly it's there, but you see this really special dogs that are able to handle wild grouse who can be the craftiest little buggers in the world. And it's just you learn a lot about a dog, you learn a lot about lines on some of those hard times, right, where it's like these birds are running, they're being crafty. um and yeah, it gives you shivers when you see a dog be able to work a wild bird like that who might be flighty, and then you see lines of dogs that are excel in that, and it's like, okay, I might not have that, but there is definitely something with this, with this bitch or with this stud that throws these type of dogs that can handle those situations better.
Great. That's very interesting, and it's neat to learn, about parts of the bird dog community and field trial community that you don't ever get to travel to. So hopefully I'll get up in your neck of the woods and get to, either Steve or I get up there and experience that. Cause I would love to go to a grouse championship and walk behind and see what it's all about and actually experience it. There's a lot of guys that come south, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of guys from the south that don't ever get to a grouse trial and really experience, or a cover dog trial and experience that type of field trial. But it still doesn't mean it's different, but it still doesn't mean it's not as important as any other championship that the AFTCA or any of these organizations run.
Yeah,
So
it's just different, just
it's yeah,
different.
it's just different. So
um
in the field trial culture, you talked about the field trial culture in your article. Do you have any funny stories of dogs or the cast of characters that you may want to share for the listeners at home, that something that happened at a field trial that you'll never forget, that was just kind of interesting?
Oh man, it's we have a great time. The cool thing is the vast majority we might have, three or four pros on the circuit up in here for the cover dog stuff, but for the most part it's all amateurs, right? So we're going there to have a good time, run our dogs. Certainly it's competitive, but uh it's also like we're gonna go hang out, have a few drinks after, have a good time, get up, run our dogs, have just an absolute blast. So there is a fair amount of tomfoolery that goes on that is just absolutely wouldn't trade it for the world. It is hilarious. But man, I tell you what, a lot of the great stories around here are runaway dogs. We've got we've got some guys that they have got some high powered pointers, and it's like there's been bets where how many minutes in are they going to lose this dog, because we're talking there are woods that go for 20 miles continuously without a road. So it's like, all right, let's give it 7 minutes and see if they can make it 7 minutes without calling for the tracker. And
Well,
there
yeah, I don't think that changes anywhere in the world. How long does it take for this particular dog to say, "Adios, I'm not listening to you
yeah,
today"?
no, that's true. But man, there's been guys that, oh, I'm sure just like obviously just with the horseback, but I mean, you got to go walk 5 miles through the grouse woods to go get your dog.
Wow.
Can't ride a horse. You got to go sludge through whatever to go find these dogs, and that's always quite funny. And the guys that often happens to, they're good sports, but man, it's just uh it's
It's
hilarious.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. So, to kind of wrap all this up, Ben, I'm gonna ask you the final question, and I know you're prepared for this. Why in the world would a bird hunter want to get into field trialing? Can you sum that up for the viewers at home and kind of give them, your 30,000-foot view of why you feel it's important, or why you think that it would be fun to them?
100%. So, I mean, first and foremost, the people you meet along the way are incredible. They are great handlers, they are great trainers, and most of all, I mean, they're the same. A lot of us are bird hunters, and I have lifelong friends out of this, even in my short time in the club, that I wouldn't trade that aspect for the world. So, I mean, honestly, that would be the number one, is just the community you get put into by field trialing. And then secondly, if you are looking to improve your dog, improve your hunting abilities, that, like we talked about, that would be a second for me for sure. I've got way better, I know I've got way better dogs now than I ever would have had outside of trialing. I have been able to push them, and myself as a handler and trainer, just learn more about how to get the most out of your bird dog. Um, so as a hunter, yeah, it's invaluable. You want the best dog, or you want to get the most potential out of that dog. Trialing will 100% help you achieve that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Ben, we've had some technical difficulties today. Steve's kind of been in and out of the podcast, fighting service in his office. But on behalf of the AFTCA, on behalf of the Dog and Pony Show, and Steve and myself, I want to say thank you for taking time to deal with us and our technical difficulties, but taking the time to do this interview, because I do feel that this cross pollination of the bird hunting community and the field trial world can happen. We just need to figure out a way to promote it and grow it and get more bird hunters involved in field trialing, and have our field trial clubs welcome these individuals in, and bring them in and show them what the great sport of field trialing is all about.
100%. And I appreciate you guys, I mean, putting out a podcast like this. And the reason I wrote that article is I wanted to help. My goal is to help demystify it, help lower that barrier to entry for someone to have enough confidence to go into that situation, and be armed with enough knowledge where they understand the rules, um enough where, yeah, they'll go out and give it a try. So it's podcasts like this, it's other resources that I believe will kind of spearhead the future for field trialing.
Well, I want to throw this out before we sign off here. Um, there's a publication that bird hunters or any newcomers looking to get involved in field trialing, they can go to the AFTCA website, aftca.org, and it's called the Standards to Field Trial Procedure, Judicial Practice, Handler, and Bird Dog Performance. And this booklet, which was once a publication for newcomers that were looking to get in the sport of field trialing to help them understand, actually, after its second edition, got adopted as the official standards in the AFTCA and has been utilized in many platforms, adopted by the American Field UKC, adopted by the NGSPA, and many of the standards, the judging standards, the performance standards, have been adopted by all organizations in the sport of field trialing. So for you newcomers out there, myself as AFTCA president, you can find me on social media. You can go through the AFTCA website. You can email me at wildcovey@gmail.com. I will answer any questions or take any amount of time to help anybody. And I know Steve will too. So anybody out there that's looking to get into the sport of field trialing, no matter if it's horseback, walking, I'm sure, Ben, you'd probably welcome anybody into your club or spend time to help them also. So we need more bird hunters to get involved in the sport of field trialing, and I think once they do, they get hooked like you did, and it can be a wonderful experience and a way to extend their bird hunting season.
I appreciate you having me on, and anyone, you can find me on Instagram, or my email is probably floating around the internet. I've got a unique enough name, so if anyone would love to answer any questions or talk about my experience, because it has been it's been a pivotal moment for me as a hunter and as a dog owner, getting into the field trialing community. So
awesome, Ben, thanks a lot. I'm going to end the recording now, and I appreciate your time.